Number 1. This happened in Sumter, South Carolina, on Halloween night 2008. A father and 4 children were trick-or-treating just outside of a popular zone down here. I was also out trick-or-treating that night with a different group. It's a small town, but usually we would just follow the pack of trick-or-treaters down certain roads until we ran out of houses to visit. Safety in numbers, and we knew the other locals wouldn't steer us wrong. Now, one of the sons of this man ran up to one of the doors with a porch light on, which is usually a sign that it's okay to trick-or-treat there. He knocked on the door. There was no immediate answer, but just before they turned to leave, a man opened fire through the closed door with an AK-47. He injured the father and one of the sons, but the son who had knocked on the door took most of the hits, and sadly, bled to death on the porch. His father later said that the rest of them likely wouldn't have survived had his son not taken the brunt of the shots. The shooter apparently opened the door immediately afterwards and simply said, "Oh no." He wasn't alone in the house, but no one else inside had made a move to stop him from opening fire. He tried to justify himself by saying that he'd been robbed and shot before, but Sumter isn't that crazy. We're a sleepy town, comfortably mixed, with a large military population, and more of a problem with marijuana and teen pregnancy than with guns and armed robbery. No one else in the house was charged, but the man who fired the gun, Quentin Patrick. I was 12 at the time, about to turn 13, and was just a few houses down trick-or-treating when I heard the shots. My mum loaded my sister and I back into the car as soon as possible, and needless to say, I never went trick-or-treating again after we found out what happened and realized that could have easily been us. Links to news articles about this incident can be found in the description below. Number 2. When I was a kid, I lived with my mother on her parents' property in a camp trailer some distance behind their house. It was a good arrangement because my mum had a full-time job and I went to a private school where there was no public transportation. So, my grandparents would watch over me, give me rides, be involved in school events, give me chores to do, and truthfully, they were more involved in my life than my own mother was. I loved them both dearly. My grandfather started suffering from dementia. I'll call him John, and I'll call my grandma Jane. At first, it was somewhat comical. Let's be honest, how many times can you lose your reading glasses on your head? And what do you mean you can't open a can of soda? Then there were the really sad and scary things, like World War II flashbacks. It soon became apparent that the man I loved so dearly was going downhill pretty fast. I was only 11 when he tried to kill me. Halloween had just passed. I think that may have played a key role in setting off the event. Of course, there were trick-or-treaters, little children dressed as spooks, harmless kids in werewolf outfits, and the occasional juvenile delinquents. Demons and darkness, drugs and alcohol, typical Halloween stuff. After that night though, he was on edge, and we weren't sure what was happening, and we had no idea how bad it was going to be. It was probably a week after Halloween, and John, Jane, Mum and I were all sitting around the fireplace. I was rehearsing lines for a school play, when I started taking note of John's posture. He looked like a twig under pressure, almost ready to snap. He was shaking uncontrollably. He was ordinarily a calm, peaceful, God-fearing man, but his words started becoming venomous and vile. He started talking about how we would all be better off in heaven. He blamed his wife for trying to kill his cousin, and he damned her for it. He didn't even recognize me, and he told me that I should go home. He kept saying that he was lost in the woods, and that the fire was the only thing keeping the wolves away. Just crazy stuff like that. Mum was sensing something was off, and told me to go back to our camper and go to bed. I was undressing to get into bed when I heard the back door slam and running footsteps. It was my mum, and she was screaming, "Get the fuck out here, now." I've only ever heard her swear about 5 times in the 30 years I've known her, and she's using the most terrible, hysterical scream. I'm scared half to death, so I ask her, "What's wrong?" Mum shouted, "Your granddad's got the gun, and he's going to kill us." We ran out to the car. It was a cold, foggy fall night, and I was freezing. I only had time to put on shorts. No socks, shirt, shoes or hat. And honestly, the shorts weren't clean. We live near the end of a one-way road, and the driveway turns in front of the house. That's the only way in or out. Mum and I jumped in the car and spun the tyres in the mud. We nearly made it to the end of the driveway, and there he was, with a rifle pointed right at me. He was standing on the front porch, under the amber porch light, tightly clutching his deer rifle. I have this mental image that is forever burned into my head of Grandpa John standing on the porch on that foggy night with that gun snug under his shoulder, his 6-shooter strapped to his hip. My mum screamed at me to get down. The gate in front of us was locked. There was no other way out. The only way out was through that gate and to pass by the front door where John was standing, and the only thing standing between my grandfather and me was a thin metal car door. My mum said, "We're gonna have to go right through this gate." I had laid the seat down so John couldn't see me. Still, my mother's head was sticking up, and a thin metal door wouldn't stop a bullet. I didn't know it at the time, but there were 3 shells in the magazine and 1 in the chamber. All John had to do was clench his fist, and his finger would pull the trigger. A finger that in the past had protected me and nurtured me was now the finger that would have been my demise had my mum not done what she'd done. We were stuck behind the gate. It was a big, heavy aluminium frame, and it was held on by a steel chain. We were only in a tiny 2-person car. I can't really find adequate enough words to convey the small size of our car and how immense the gate was to me. It was a huge barricade, a fortress, my doom. But Mum backed up the car and spun the tyres again, and we busted through the gate, turned the corner, and were going 40 miles an hour in what seemed like 2 seconds. At this point, I couldn't see Grandpa because my seat was laid down. The gate didn't break, nor did the chain. Fortunately, the chain was being held on by a rusty old nail pounded into a wooden post. The rusty nail is what broke. We found Grandma a little way down the road. I spent the night at my aunt's house, half naked and afraid. John didn't follow us. He stayed there with his trusty guns until his oldest son came and managed to convince him to give up his weapons, bringing an end to this terrifying night. Needless to say, things were never the same after that. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's. Looking back and understanding the effects of Parkinson's, it is amazing that the trigger didn't go off while he was clutching it. Parkinson's is a neurological disorder that causes uncontrollable shaking and involuntary spasms. It really is a miracle that his finger didn't set off the trigger while he was pointing his gun at me. As I grew older, I had to take care of him. Feed him, bathe him, change his diapers. Shitty work for a young teen. It wasn't his fault. I never bore him any ill will. Grandpa died when I was 14, and he left me the rifle that he tried to shoot me with. I still hold it with honor. Hey guys, Lazy here, and thank you very much for listening. Be sure to keep sending me in your own experiences for a chance to have it read out in a future video. You can find my email address in the description below. Stay spooky, and remember, the best things happen in the dark.